The great hall stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the enormous space. Some looked like giant insects with rainbow wings. Others moved like liquid silver in glass containers. A few had too many eyes or no eyes at all. This was Axiom Prime, the most important world in the Zephyrian Empire, and today marked the Great Convergence. Every 1,000 years, all the smart species in the galaxy came together here. They talked about peace, trade, and problems that needed solving. The meetings usually lasted for weeks. Important decisions got made. Wars ended. New friendships began between worlds that had never met before. Elena Vasquez stood near the back wall, trying not to feel small. She was one of only 12 humans at this massive gathering. Most alien species barely knew Earth existed. Those who did know about it thought humans were still hitting rocks together to make fire. Elena knew better, but proving it was hard when everyone looked at you like you were a pet that learned to walk upright. She wore her best uniform. The blue fabric had Earth's symbol on the shoulder, but it looked cheap next to the glowing robes and metal suits around her. Elena was a doctor who studied alien life forms. She had fought for 3 years just to get permission to attend this meeting. The Galactic Council had only said yes because they needed someone to carry bags and take notes. At the center of the hall sat a throne made from what looked like frozen starlight. On it rested the great elder Thainval. He was ancient beyond anything humans could imagine. 3,000 years old, maybe more. His skin was pale blue and seemed to shine from inside. His eyes held the wisdom of watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. The great elder had guided peace talks between species for longer than Earth had been writing down history. He spoke 47 languages. He could read minds when needed. He knew the cultural customs of every world in the Empire. When the great elder spoke, wars stopped. When he made suggestions, entire planets listened. Elena watched him carefully during the morning sessions. Something was wrong. The great elder moved slower than the video recordings she had studied. His voice was quieter. Twice she saw him pause in the middle of sentences like he forgot what he was saying. The other aliens didn't seem to notice. They were too busy arguing about mining rights on distant moons and trade agreements for weird crystals Elena had never heard of. But Elena had spent years watching sick creatures in labs. She knew the signs of illness when she saw them. Around midday, disaster struck. The great elder was speaking about a border dispute between 2 insect-like species when he suddenly stopped talking. His pale blue skin turned gray. He gripped the arms of his throne and tried to stand up. Instead, he fell forward and crashed to the metal floor. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Thousands of alien voices rose in panic. Some beings rushed toward the throne. Others backed away in fear. A few species started praying in languages that sounded like wind chimes or breaking glass. Zephyrian medical teams appeared within minutes. They moved like dancers, all dressed in white robes that flowed like water. Their hands glowed as they ran scanners over the great elder's still body. More doctors arrived carrying machines Elena didn't recognize. Some looked like metal spiders. Others hummed with energy that made the air taste like copper. For 2 hours, the doctors worked. They injected glowing liquids into his veins. They surrounded him with force fields that sparkled like northern lights. They connected him to machines that beeped and whistled in complex patterns. Nothing worked. The great elder's breathing got weaker. His skin turned darker gray. Finally, the lead doctor stood up. Her name was Healer Zinthara, and she was famous across 50 worlds for saving impossible cases. Now she looked defeated. "We cannot identify the cause," she announced to the silent hall. "His body shows no signs of disease, poison, or injury. All organs function normally, yet he fades before our eyes." A murmur of worry spread through the crowd. The great elder was too important to lose. Without him, peace between many species might collapse. Wars could start. Entire civilizations might destroy each other. Healer Zinthara raised her hand for silence. "We must consult the system." The system was an artificial intelligence built by the Zephyrians long ago. It was older than most civilizations and smarter than any single being. The system knew everything about medicine, technology, and the biological makeup of every known species. If the system couldn't help, nothing could. A section of the floor opened up. A pillar of light rose from below, carrying a silver sphere the size of Elena's head. The sphere floated above the great elder's body and began to scan him with beams of different colors. Red light, blue light, green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Everyone waited. The sphere made soft sounds as it worked. Elena thought it sounded like whale songs mixed with computer beeps. The scanning went on for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Then the sphere stopped and hovered in the center of the hall. When the system spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. It sounded like 3 different people talking together in perfect harmony. "Analysis complete," the system said. "The Great Elder suffers from consciousness fragmentation at the quantum level. His mind has been damaged by prolonged exposure to psychic trauma from multiple species. Standard medical intervention will fail." Healers in Thara stepped forward. "What treatment do you recommend?" "Treatment requires genetic markers found only in species designation. Earthborn humans. No substitute exists. Probability of success without human intervention, 0%. The hall exploded with noise. Aliens talked, shouted, and argued in dozens of languages. Elena heard words like impossible and ridiculous and primitive species repeated over and over. Many beings pointed at the small group of humans near the back wall. Earthborn humans. Healers in Thara looked confused. Their medical knowledge is centuries behind ours. They still use metal tools for surgery. How could they possibly help where we have failed? The system's voice stayed calm. Human brains evolved unique mechanisms for processing psychological trauma. Their neuroplasticity exceeds all known species. The treatment requires abilities that only human consciousness possesses. More arguing erupted from the crowd. Elena heard a tall reptile-like being say, "This is madness. Humans barely understand their own bodies, let alone alien physiology." A creature that looked like living crystal chimed in. "Perhaps the system is malfunctioning. When did we last run diagnostics?" Elena looked at the other humans in her group. Most of them were diplomats or trade representatives. None were doctors. She was the only one with medical training, and her experience was limited to studying alien bacteria and virus samples. She had never treated a patient, much less someone as important as the Great Elder. But she knew things about trauma that these advanced aliens might not understand. During her studies on Earth, she had worked with soldiers who came back from wars with invisible wounds. She had read research about how human minds could heal from terrible experiences. Maybe, just maybe, she could help. The arguing continued. Some aliens demanded proof that the system was working correctly. Others suggested looking for human doctors elsewhere in the galaxy. A few insisted on trying more traditional treatments first. Through all the noise, Elena watched the Great Elder lying motionless on his throne. His breathing was getting weaker. His gray skin was turning almost black around the edges. He was dying while everyone argued about whether humans were smart enough to save him. Elena took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast. Her hands were shaking. Every logical part of her mind said this was crazy. She was just a researcher from a planet most aliens thought was full of savages. What could she possibly do that the greatest doctors in the galaxy couldn't? But someone had to try. Elena stepped forward and raised her hand high above her head. The hall slowly grew quiet as beings noticed the small human woman standing alone. "I'll do it," Elena said. Her voice carried clearly through the sudden silence. "I'll try to save him." The silence in the great hall felt heavy like storm clouds. Thousands of alien eyes stared at Elena as she walked toward the center where the Great Elder lay dying. Her legs felt weak, but she kept moving. Behind her, she could hear whispers in languages that sounded like music, grinding metal and breaking ice. Healers in Thera blocked Elena's path. The tall alien woman had skin that changed colors like oil on water. Right now, it showed deep red patterns that Elena guessed meant anger or doubt. "You cannot be serious," Zinthara said. Her voice was cold as space. "We have studied medicine for thousands of years. Our technology can rebuild organs at the molecular level. We can cure diseases that would kill entire planets. And you think a primitive human can succeed where we have failed?" Elena stopped walking. She looked up at the healer who was twice her height. "Maybe that's the problem," Elena said quietly. "What do you mean?" "You've been looking at his body." The system said this was consciousness fragmentation. That means his mind is broken, not his flesh. More Zephyrian doctors gathered around them. They wore robes that glowed with soft light and carried medical tools Elena couldn't name. Their faces showed expressions she was learning to read as disbelief and annoyance. "We are not ignorant of mental health," said another doctor. His skin was silver and his eyes were like black mirrors. "Our psychic healers can repair damaged minds, erase traumatic memories, and restore perfect mental balance." Elena shook her head. "Perfect mental balance isn't always healthy. Sometimes minds need to feel pain to heal properly. The doctors looked at each other with confusion. One of them, whose body seemed to be made of living glass, spoke up. Why would anyone want to experience pain? Our treatments remove all suffering immediately. Because that's not how trauma works, Elena said. She felt more confident now, talking about something she understood. When terrible things happen to people, their minds try to protect them by pushing the bad memories away. But if you don't deal with those memories properly, they don't disappear. They hide inside your mind and make you sick in ways you don't expect. Healer Zinthara's skin shifted to yellow patterns. The Great Elder has perfect mental discipline. He has trained for centuries to control his thoughts and emotions. That might be the problem, Elena said. Can I examine him? The doctors looked at each other. Finally, Zinthara stepped aside. You may look, but do not touch anything. Our instruments are monitoring his vital signs. Elena approached the Great Elder's body carefully. He was lying on a medical bed that had replaced his throne. Machines surrounded him like metal flowers. Lights blinked in patterns she didn't understand. Soft sounds hummed in the air, but Elena ignored all the fancy technology. Instead, she knelt down next to the bed and looked at the Great Elder's face. His skin was dark gray now, almost black. His breathing was shallow and fast. His closed eyes moved back and forth like he was having bad dreams. Elena had seen these signs before. During her medical training on Earth, she had worked in a hospital that treated soldiers coming back from wars. Many of them looked exactly like this. The doctors called it severe psychological trauma. How long has he been the Great Elder? Elena asked. 3,000 years, Zinthara answered. He has guided our people through countless crises. What kind of crises? Wars, plagues, natural disasters, the deaths of entire civilizations. He has felt the suffering of billions of beings through his psychic connections. Elena nodded slowly. And in all that time, did he ever take a break? Did he ever get treatment for the psychological stress? The doctors looked puzzled. Why would he need treatment? He is strong. He endures. Nobody is that strong, Elena said. Look at his eye movements. He's having nightmares while he's unconscious. His breathing is irregular. His muscles are tense even though he's barely alive. These are signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic what? Asked the glass doctor. Elena stood up and faced the group of alien healers. It's a condition humans get when they experience or witness terrible events. The mind gets stuck replaying the trauma over and over. It affects the whole body, not just thoughts. But the Great Elder is mentally disciplined, Zinthara insisted. He meditates for hours each day. He has perfect emotional control. That's exactly the problem, Elena said, getting excited as the pieces came together in her mind. He's been suppressing all that trauma for 3,000 years. He never processed it properly. Now his mind is fragmenting because it can't hold all that pain anymore. The silver-skinned doctor crossed his arms. Even if your theory is correct, how could human medicine help? We have the most advanced mental health treatments in the galaxy. Elena thought about how to explain this. Your treatments focus on removing pain and creating perfect balance. But healing from trauma doesn't work that way. You have to go through the pain, understand it, and then learn to live with it in a healthy way. Humans are really good at this because we've had to be. What do you mean? Asked Zinthara. Humans live short lives compared to most species. We face death, loss, and suffering all the time. We've developed ways to cope with trauma that don't involve just pushing it away or erasing it. We learn to process it, share it with others, and use it to become stronger. The doctors whispered among themselves in their musical language. Elena caught a few words that her translator turned into impossible and unscientific. Healer Zinthara turned back to Elena. Even if we accepted your theory, we cannot allow you to experiment on the Great Elder. He is too important. If you make a mistake, entire civilizations could fall into war. Then let me prove my theory first, Elena said. Give me access to his medical records. Let me study the pattern of his symptoms. If I'm wrong, you'll see it in the data. The doctors talked among themselves for several minutes. Finally, Zinthara nodded. Very well, but you will work under supervision. And if your human theories prove false, you will leave immediately. Elena smiled for the first time since arriving at the convergence. Deal, but I'll need to contact other humans for help. This is too big for one person. What other humans? Asked the glass doctor. Are there human medical experts elsewhere in the galaxy? Better, Elena said. There are human doctors on Earth who specialize in treating trauma. They know techniques that might save the Great Elder's life. Synthara's skin shifted to purple patterns. Earth is months away by standard travel. The Great Elder will be dead long before help arrives. Then we'll have to use faster-than-light communication, Elena said. And we'll need to bring them here quickly. Impossible, said the Silver Doctor. Humans are not authorized for emergency FTL transport. Elena looked at the dying Great Elder, then back at the alien doctors. The system said only humans can save him. Do you want to let him die because of paperwork? The doctors fell silent. In the background, the sounds of the Great Elder's medical machine seemed to get quieter. His breathing was becoming even more shallow. Finally, Healer Synthara spoke. I will authorize emergency transport for 2 additional humans, but they must be the best your species has to offer. Elena nodded quickly. I know exactly who to call. Dr. Sarah Chen is the best trauma therapist on Earth. Dr. Marcus Webb is a brain surgeon who studies consciousness. Together we might be able to save him. Might is not good enough, Synthara said. Elena looked down at the Great Elder's face. His skin was getting darker by the minute. She could see his pulse beating weakly in his neck. Time was running out. It's better than definitely losing him, Elena said. And sometimes when everything seems impossible, you have to trust in things you don't fully understand. She paused and looked around at all the advanced technology surrounding them. Your machines are amazing. Your knowledge is vast. But maybe what the Great Elder needs isn't more technology. Maybe he needs something only humans can provide. Which is what? Asked Synthara. Elena smiled sadly. The knowledge that it's okay to hurt, and that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry pain without letting it destroy you. The alien doctors stared at her with expressions she couldn't read, but Elena could see something changing in their eyes. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the beginning of understanding that sometimes the most primitive approach was also the most advanced. Elena's hands shook as she recorded the emergency message to Earth. She sat in a small room connected to the medical center, surrounded by alien communication equipment that hummed and glowed with blue light. The translation device on her collar felt heavy as she chose her words. Carefully. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, calling Earth Emergency Medical Response, she said into the floating sphere that served as a microphone. I'm transmitting from Axiom Prime in the Zephyrian Empire. We have a medical emergency that requires immediate human intervention. She paused and took a deep breath. How could she explain this situation without sounding completely insane? I need Dr. Sarah Chen from the San Francisco Trauma Recovery Center and Dr. Marcus Webb from the International Consciousness Research Institute. Tell them it's about treating severe PTSD in a non-human patient. The patient has been exposed to psychological trauma for over 3,000 years. This is not a joke. This is not a test. Send them on the fastest ship Earth has available. Elena stopped recording and leaned back in the strange chair that molded itself to her body. Through the transparent walls, she could see Zephyrian doctors working frantically around the Great Elder's bed. Their glowing tools moved like fireflies in the dim light. The reply from Earth came faster than she expected. The communication sphere lit up with a blue glow, and a familiar voice filled the room. Elena, this is Director Harrison from the Medical Council. Elena recognized her former professor's voice immediately. We received your message. The situation you describe seems unlikely. Can you provide more details? Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Unlikely doesn't begin to cover it, Professor. The most important leader in the galaxy is dying from what I believe is severe PTSD. An AI system that's older than human civilization says only humans can save him. I've convinced alien doctors to let me try therapy techniques on a 3,000-year-old psychic being. Silence came from the communication device for a long moment. Then Professor Harrison's voice returned, sounding worried. Elena, are you feeling all right? Has something happened to you mentally? I'm fine, Professor. I know how this sounds, but I'm sending you all the medical data the Zephyrians have collected. Look at the brain scans. Look at the psychological symptoms. Tell me what you see. Elena transferred the alien medical files through the communication system. She waited nervously while Earth's computers analyzed the data. The Great Elder's condition was getting worse every hour. His skin was now completely black and his breathing had become so shallow that she could barely see his chest moving. After 20 minutes, Professor Harrison's voice returned. This time he sounded shocked. Elena, these readings are incredible. The patient shows classic signs of severe trauma response, but on a scale we've never seen before. The neural pathway damage is extensive. How is this being even still alive? Alien physiology is tougher than human, Elena said, but not tough enough to handle 3 millennia of accumulated psychological damage. Will you send the doctors I requested? Dr. Chen and Dr. Webb are already preparing for departure. They'll travel on the UES Endeavour, our fastest research vessel. They should reach you in 72 hours. Elena felt a wave of relief, followed immediately by worry. Professor, the patient might not have 72 hours. Can they go any faster? The ship will use experimental FTL drives, Harrison said. But Elena, there's something else. The Galactic Council has been contacted about this situation. Many alien species are expressing concerns about human involvement. Elena wasn't surprised. During her time at the medical center, she had heard Zephyrian officials arguing loudly in their musical language. Her translator picked up words like dangerous and unqualified. What kind of concerns? They're worried that human medical practices might be too primitive or aggressive for alien physiology. Some species are threatening to withdraw from the convergence if humans are allowed to treat the Great Elder. Elena looked through the transparent wall at the dying leader. His face was completely gray now, and the medical machines around him were beeping faster and more urgently. Professor, tell the Galactic Council that their advanced medicine has failed completely. The patient is dying while they argue about human qualifications. Sometimes you have to try something new even if it scares you. I'll pass along your message, Harrison said. But Elena, be careful. If this goes wrong, it could damage Earth's reputation in the galaxy for generations. And if we don't try, the most important peacekeeper in known space dies. Elena replied. I'll take that risk. The communication ended and Elena returned to the medical center. The scene there had become more chaotic. More Zephyrian doctors had arrived, along with medical experts from other species. Elena saw what looked like a giant spider wearing a white coat examining brain scan data. A creature made of living electricity floated over the Great Elder's body, occasionally sparking with frustrated energy. Healer Zinthara approached Elena with her skin showing dark blue patterns. The patient's condition is deteriorating rapidly. How long until your human colleagues arrive? 3 days, Elena said. Zinthara's skin shifted to angry red. He will not survive 3 days without intervention. Elena looked at the Great Elder's still form. An idea was forming in her mind, but it was risky. What if we start treatment now? I can begin basic trauma therapy techniques while we wait for the others to arrive. Absolutely not, said the silver-skinned doctor Elena had met earlier. We cannot allow experimental human procedures on such an important patient. Your procedures aren't working, Elena pointed out. He's getting worse despite all your advanced technology. At least let me try some basic techniques that can't cause physical harm. The doctors argued among themselves in several different languages. Elena caught fragments through her translator. Too dangerous. Unproven methods. What if she makes him worse? Finally, a new voice interrupted the argument. It came from the system's floating sphere, which had been quietly monitoring the Great Elder's condition. Recommendation: allow human intervention to begin immediately, the system announced in its harmonious voice. Patient's deterioration rate has accelerated. Probability of survival without treatment, 14% and falling. The sphere paused, then continued. Analysis of human medical literature indicates their trauma therapy techniques are non-invasive and unlikely to cause additional physical harm. Risk of attempting treatment is lower than risk of continued inaction. Healer Zinthara looked at Elena with an expression that might have been desperation. What exactly would you do? Elena approached the Great Elder's bed carefully. First, I need to understand what specific traumas are causing the most damage. Then I can begin cognitive behavioral therapy adapted for his situation. Cognitive what? Asked the glass doctor. It's a way of helping patients process traumatic memories by changing how they think about them, Elena explained. Instead of suppressing painful experiences, we help people understand them and find healthy ways to cope. The spider-like doctor made a sound like metal scraping. This seems very primitive compared to our memory modification techniques. Maybe, Elena said, but your memory modification hasn't worked. His mind is rejecting attempts to erase or suppress the trauma. That suggests his consciousness needs to process these experiences, not forget them. She looked around at all the alien faces watching her. Look, I know this seems crazy. I know human medicine appears primitive compared to your technology. But sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. Elena placed her hand gently on the Great Elder's forehead. His skin felt cold and somehow wrong, like touching metal that had been left in space. But she could sense something underneath the physical symptoms. It felt like deep, overwhelming sadness mixed with crushing responsibility. I can feel his pain, Elena said quietly. It's enormous. He's been carrying the suffering of entire civilizations for thousands of years, trying to bear it all alone. No wonder his mind is breaking apart. She looked up at healer Zinthara. In human culture, we have a saying, a burden shared is a burden halved. The Great Elder has been trying to carry infinite pain by himself. That's not strength. That's a form of psychological suicide. The alien doctors watched as Elena began talking quietly to the unconscious Great Elder. She spoke about recognizing trauma, accepting painful emotions, and finding healthy ways to process difficult experiences. To the aliens, it probably looked like she was just talking to herself. But the Great Elder's medical readings began to change. His heart rate became more regular. His breathing deepened slightly. For the first time in days, his skin showed tiny hints of its original blue color around the edges. Elena smiled as she continued talking. Help was coming from Earth. But maybe, just maybe, the healing had already begun. The UES Endeavour dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash that lit up the space around Axiom Prime like a tiny star. Elena watched from the medical center's observation deck as the human ship approached the massive Zephyrian station. The Endeavour looked small and simple compared to the flowing organic shapes of alien vessels, but Elena had never been happier to see anything in her life. 3 days had passed since she began basic trauma therapy with the Great Elder. His condition had stabilized slightly, but he was still unconscious and fading. The alien doctors watched her work with growing interest but also growing impatience. Several times Elena had heard them arguing about whether to stop her, primitive treatments and try more, aggressive medical interventions. The docking bay doors opened with a sound like singing crystals. Dr. Sarah Chen and Dr. Marcus Webb floated through the entrance in personal transport bubbles that looked like soap made of light. Elena rushed to meet them as soon as the atmospheric barriers allowed. Sarah Chen was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes that seemed to see everything. She specialized in helping people recover from the worst kinds of psychological trauma. Marcus Webb was tall and thin with steady hands that had performed surgery on hundreds of human brains. He studied consciousness and how minds worked in ways that most people couldn't understand. Elena, Sarah said as she stepped out of her transport bubble, show us the patient immediately. We studied the medical files during transit, but seeing him in person will tell us more. Elena led them quickly through corridors filled with curious alien observers. Word had spread throughout the station that humans were attempting to heal the Great Elder. Some beings watched with hope, others with skepticism, and a few with obvious hostility. In the medical center, healer Zinthara and her team had prepared a special area for the human doctors to work. Alien medical equipment surrounded the Great Elder's bed, but Elena noticed they had also brought in some basic human medical tools that must have come from the Endeavour. Marcus Webb approached the Great Elder's bed and began examining him with both human and alien instruments. His experienced hands checked pulse points and reflexes while his eyes studied the brain scan displays floating above the bed. Remarkable, Webb murmured. His brain structure is different from humans, but the patterns of trauma damage are identical to cases I've seen in severe PTSD patients. The consciousness fragmentation the system mentioned appears to be happening in the quantum structures that connect his higher brain functions. Sarah Chen stood at the foot of the bed, observing the Great Elder's face and body language even though he was unconscious. Elena, you said he's been carrying the psychological burdens of multiple civilizations for 3,000 years? That's right, Elena confirmed. Every time a species under his care suffers a major trauma, wars, natural disasters, extinctions, he experiences it psychically. He absorbs their pain to help them heal, but he never processes his own emotional reactions to what he experiences. Sarah nodded slowly. Classic caretaker trauma. We see this in human therapists and medical workers who try to help everyone without taking care of themselves. But the scale here is unprecedented. Healer Zinthara approached the human doctors with her skin showing nervous yellow patterns. Can you help him? Our most advanced treatments have failed completely. Marcus Webb looked up from his examination. The physical damage to his brain is extensive but not irreversible. However, this will require a combination of surgical intervention and psychological therapy that has never been attempted on a non-human patient. What kind of surgery? Asked the silver-skinned Zephyrian doctor. I need to repair the quantum connections in his consciousness centers, Webb explained. But unlike normal brain surgery, this requires the patient to be partially conscious during the procedure. He'll need to actively participate in processing his traumatic memories while I work on his neural pathways. The alien doctors looked horrified. You want to wake him up during brain surgery? The glass doctor asked. Sarah Chen stepped forward to explain. That's where I come in. I'll guide him through trauma processing therapy while Dr. Webb operates. We'll help him confront and healthily process 3,000 years of accumulated pain, bit by bit. This sounds extremely dangerous, Synthara said. It is, Elena admitted, but it's our only option. The Great Elder's mind is fracturing because it can't hold all that unprocessed trauma anymore. We have to help him deal with it properly or he'll die. The system's floating sphere, which had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. Analysis indicates 73% probability of success with proposed human treatment protocol. This exceeds all previously calculated probabilities. Recommendation: proceed immediately. Synthara looked around at her colleagues, then back at the human doctors. What do you need from us? We'll need your quantum brain surgery equipment, Webb said. Human technology isn't advanced enough for this kind of neural work, but we'll guide the process using human understanding of trauma recovery. And I'll need complete privacy during the therapy sessions, Sarah added. The patient needs to feel safe to express emotions that he's been suppressing for millennia. Too many observers will make him feel judged or watched. The Zephyrian doctors agreed to the conditions, though Elena could see they were nervous about letting humans control such an important procedure. Over the next few hours, they worked together to prepare the operating area and coordinate the hybrid technology they would need. As evening approached on Axiom Prime, the Great Elder was wheeled into a surgical suite that looked like the inside of a crystal cave. Alien instruments hummed with energy while human monitoring equipment beeped steadily. Webb wore a headset that connected his mind to the Zephyrian quantum surgery tools, allowing him to control them with thought and precision impossible through manual operation. Sarah Chen sat beside the Great Elder's head, speaking quietly as the anesthesia wore off and his ancient eyes slowly opened for the first time in days. Great Elder, Sarah said in a calm, gentle voice. You're safe. We're here to help you heal. You've been carrying pain that was never meant to be borne alone. The Great Elder's eyes focused on her with difficulty. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through broken glass. The suffering. So much suffering. I know, Sarah said. You've felt the pain of countless civilizations. You've tried to absorb their trauma to help them heal, but you never gave yourself permission to feel that pain properly. Marcus Webb began the delicate process of mapping the Great Elder's quantum consciousness structures. On screens around the room, Elena could see patterns of light that represented thoughts, memories, and emotions. Many of the patterns looked jagged and broken like shattered windows. Great Elder, Sarah continued, we're going to help you process some of these traumatic memories. It will be painful, but it's the only way to heal. Are you ready? The ancient being nodded weakly. I've tried to be strong. For everyone. Strength isn't carrying pain alone, Sarah said firmly. True strength is learning to process pain in healthy ways and accepting help when you need it. Humans learned this lesson through thousands of years of war, loss, and recovery. Now we're going to teach it to you. Webb began working on the first cluster of damaged neural pathways while Sarah guided the Great Elder through remembering and processing the destruction of a civilization called the Veltar. Elena watched the monitors as broken patterns of light slowly began to reconnect and stabilize. Feel the grief, Sarah instructed. Don't push it away. Let yourself mourn for the Veltar people. Their loss was real and terrible, and it's okay to feel sad about it. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Great Elder began to cry. Tears ran down his blue-gray face as decades of suppressed grief poured out of him. The medical monitor showed his vital signs stabilizing as the emotional pressure that had been crushing his mind finally found release. Good, Sarah said. This is healing. This is how trauma recovery actually works. Elena looked around at the alien doctors watching the procedure. Their faces showed amazement and something else, recognition. They were beginning to understand that healing sometimes required feeling worse before feeling better. The surgery continued through the night, with Webb repairing neural damage while Sarah helped the Great Elder process memory after memory of loss, war, and suffering. Each time he allowed himself to feel the pain properly instead of suppressing it, his consciousness patterns grew stronger and more stable. As dawn broke over Axiom Prime, the Great Elder opened his eyes and looked around with clarity Elena hadn't seen since the crisis began. "I feel," he said slowly, "lighter. Like I have been carrying stones in my heart for centuries and now they are gone." Sarah smiled and squeezed his hand. "That's exactly what you've been doing. And now you know how to put the stones down." 3 weeks after the surgery, the Great Elder Thainvol stood before the assembled convergence looking more alive than he had in centuries. His skin glowed with healthy blue light, and his eyes sparkled with wisdom that seemed deeper than before. The Great Hall fell silent as billions of beings across the galaxy watched through holographic broadcasts. Elena sat in the front row with Sarah Chen and Marcus Webb, still amazed by how much everything had changed. The Great Elder's recovery had been remarkable, but what surprised her most was how the alien doctors had embraced human, psychological medicine with enthusiasm that bordered on obsession. Healers in Thera had spent the past weeks learning everything she could about human trauma therapy. The Glass Doctor had requested copies of every psychology textbook Earth had ever written. Even the spider-like surgeon had begun incorporating human emotional healing techniques into her practice. The Great Elder raised his hand, and the massive hall became perfectly quiet. "My friends," he began, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the enormous space, "I stand before you today not just healed in body, but transformed in spirit. I have learned something that will change how we understand healing, wisdom, and strength itself." He paused and looked directly at Elena. "For 3,000 years, I believed that true leadership meant carrying the burdens of others without showing weakness. I thought that to help civilizations heal from trauma, I must absorb their pain and bear it in silence. I was wrong." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as beings translated his words into hundreds of languages. "The humans did not cure me with advanced technology or superior medical knowledge," the Great Elder continued. "They healed me by teaching me something our advanced civilizations had forgotten, that acknowledging pain is not weakness, and that healing requires processing trauma, not hiding from it." On the screens around the hall, Elena could see the faces of alien leaders from across the galaxy. Some looked confused, others skeptical, but many showed expressions of growing understanding. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Dr. Sarah Chen, and Dr. Marcus Webb did not just save my life, the Great Elder said. They revealed a fundamental truth about consciousness that our species have overlooked in our pursuit of technological advancement. He gestured toward the human section of the hall. "We assumed that because human technology appears primitive compared to ours, their understanding of mind and healing must also be primitive. We were spectacularly wrong." The system's floating sphere materialized above the Great Elder's head and spoke in its harmonious voice. "Analysis of human psychological sciences has revealed therapeutic techniques of unprecedented sophistication. Human understanding of trauma recovery, emotional processing, and mental resilience exceeds all known civilizations by significant margins." Elena felt her heart beating faster as thousands of alien eyes focused on the small human delegation. "The system has updated all medical databases to reflect this discovery," the Great Elder announced. "Human psychological sciences are now classified as the most advanced mental health knowledge in the known galaxy." Explosive conversations erupted throughout the hall as beings reacted to this revelation. Elena heard fragments of translation. "Impossible. Revolutionary. How did we miss this?" The Great Elder raised his hand again for silence. "But the most important lesson is not about human superiority. It is about the danger of assumptions. We assumed that advancement meant eliminating suffering. Humans learned that advancement means understanding suffering and growing stronger through it." He looked around the hall with eyes that seemed to see into every heart present. "For millennia, I have guided peace negotiations, mediated conflicts, and helped civilizations recover from disasters. But I never truly understood healing until 3 humans taught me that strength comes not from carrying pain alone, but from sharing it and processing it with others. Healer Zinthera stood up from the medical section. Her skin showed patterns of deep respect that Elena had learned meant profound gratitude. Great Elder, how will this knowledge change our medical practices? Fundamentally, the Great Elder replied, we will establish the Galactic Institute for Psychological Healing, with Earth serving as the primary research center. Human doctors will train healers from across the galaxy in proper trauma recovery techniques. Elena felt dizzy. When she had raised her hand to volunteer 3 weeks ago, she never imagined it would lead to Earth becoming the galaxy's center for mental health research. Additionally, the Great Elder continued, Dr. Elena Vasquez has accepted the position of Chief of Interspecies Psychological Medicine. She will oversee the integration of human healing wisdom with alien medical technology. The hall erupted in applause that sounded like music, thunder, and breaking waves all mixed together. Elena stood up on shaking legs as beings she couldn't even identify clapped, chittered, hummed, and flashed lights in appreciation. Marcus Webb leaned over to whisper in her ear, Elena, do you realize what this means? Earth just became the most medically important world in the galaxy. Sarah Chen smiled and squeezed Elena's hand. It means humans finally found their place among the stars, not as conquerors or supplicants, but as healers. The Great Elder waited for the applause to fade before continuing. I have one more announcement. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to offer Earth full membership with all privileges and responsibilities that entails. Elena sat down heavily. Full galactic membership meant access to technologies that could solve humanity's problems overnight. Faster than light travel, unlimited energy, medical advances that could eliminate most diseases. It meant Earth would become an equal partner in galactic civilization, instead of an ignored backwater world. The vote was not even close, the Great Elder added with something that might have been amusement. It turns out that when you save the life of the galaxy's most important leader, using supposedly primitive medicine, other civilizations take notice. Over the following hours, Elena found herself surrounded by alien doctors eager to learn human therapeutic techniques. The glass doctor wanted to understand cognitive behavioral therapy. The spider surgeon asked detailed questions about PTSD treatment protocols. A being made of living energy inquired about meditation and mindfulness practices. It's remarkable, Zinthera told Elena as they reviewed treatment plans for other trauma cases. We have spent thousands of years developing technology to modify memories, alter brain chemistry, and suppress negative emotions. But we never considered that healing might require experiencing and processing pain, rather than avoiding it. Elena nodded. Humans had to learn this the hard way. We've been dealing with trauma for our entire evolutionary history. War, death, loss, suffering, these things shaped how our minds work. We developed psychological tools for healing because we had to. And now those tools may be the most valuable medical knowledge in the galaxy, Zinthera said. The irony is beautiful. The species we thought was least advanced turns out to have mastered the most fundamental aspect of healing. As the convergence wound down over the following days, Elena received offers from dozens of civilizations wanting to establish human medical training centers on their worlds. The University of Galactic Healing planned to open branch campuses across known space, all based on human psychological research. On her last day at Axiom Prime, Elena stood in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Sarah and Marcus had already returned to Earth to begin organizing the massive expansion of human medical education that would be needed. Elena would stay to oversee the transition and begin training alien doctors in human healing techniques. The Great Elder approached her, moving with the graceful strength she remembered from before his illness. Dr. Vasquez, he said, I wanted to thank you personally before you begin your new duties. Elena turned to face him. You don't need to thank me, Great Elder. I just did what felt right. That is exactly why I must thank you, he replied. When I was dying, surrounded by the most advanced medical technology in the galaxy, you saw what others missed. You recognized that sometimes the simplest approach is also the most profound. He looked out at the stars that glittered like diamonds against the black of space. Humans have given the galaxy something more valuable than new technology or military might. You have given us the wisdom to heal not just bodies but souls. Elena smiled as she watched ships from hundreds of worlds preparing to carry news of humanity's medical breakthrough across the galaxy. Earth had finally found its place among the stars, not through conquest or submission, but through the most human trait of all, the ability to help others heal from pain. "Welcome to the galaxy, Dr. Vasquez," the great elder said. "We have been waiting for you far longer than we knew.